Most Model Y Juniper owners charge wrong from day one, not because they're careless, but because they treat it like a gas car. Charging to 100%, letting it sit for hours, then running it down to near zero feels logical. But Tesla's battery chemistry works the opposite way. Why does the habit that seems most convenient accelerate aging the fastest? And what are the 10 other daily mistakes silently costing you range, battery health, and peace of mind? Subscribe to Auto Gear Shift before these habits become permanent. Here's what nobody tells you when you drive your new Juniper home for the first time. You see the battery at 60%, plug it in overnight like it's the most natural thing in the world, wake up to 100%, and feel this quiet satisfaction. You've done it right. The car is ready. This becomes your routine for weeks, maybe months. Everything feels fine. Range looks normal. Nothing breaks. Then one morning 6 months later, you notice something that makes your stomach drop a little. The battery just doesn't hold charge the way it used to. What happened? You didn't crash it. You didn't abuse it. You just treated it like every car you've ever owned. And that's exactly the problem. Lithium-ion batteries age fastest when they sit at full charge, especially in heat. The cells are stressed at high voltage, and degradation happens silently while you sleep. Tesla knew this would happen, which is why they built in separate charging limits labeled daily and trip. But most of us ignore it because our brains are hardwired from decades of gas cars where full tank means ready to go. The fix sounds simple. Charge to 80% for daily driving. Only go to 100% right before long trips. But emotionally, it's harder than you think. That missing 20% nags at you. What if you need it? What if something unexpected happens? Here's what finally made it click for me. That 20% difference is maybe 60 to 80 kilometers of range. When was the last time your daily routine actually needed that extra buffer? Almost never. Meanwhile, consistently staying in the 20 to 80% zone can preserve real battery health over years. We're talking about the difference between your car still having 90% capacity versus 80% when you go to sell it 5 years from now. That's thousands of dollars in resale value you're either protecting or throwing away. But there's another mistake even careful owners make. You charge to 80% on Monday, feel responsible, then don't drive until Friday. The battery still sits at elevated voltage for 4 days straight. What you actually want is the departure time feature. Set when you normally leave for work, and the car finishes charging right before you walk out the door. This keeps the battery lower most of the time, only peaking when you actually need the energy. It's the difference between eating fresh food versus eating processed food that's been sitting around. Your battery responds the same way. Every Juniper owner has this moment. You're driving on the highway, screen shows 450 kilometers remaining. You drive 100 kilometers. Now it says 310 kilometers left. Your brain tries to do the math, and it doesn't work. Where did that extra 40 kilometers go? Did something break? Is the battery dying faster than normal? Nothing broke. The car is fine. What you're seeing is the fundamental limitation of range estimation. And once you understand why it fails, you'll stop trusting it completely. That number is just a projection based on your recent driving. But your next 100 kilometers might be totally different from your last 100 kilometers. Speed is the invisible killer here. Aerodynamic drag doesn't increase linearly, it increases exponentially. Drive 120 kilometers per hour instead of 100 kilometers per hour, and you're not using 20% more energy. It's closer to 44% more. And because the Juniper is so quiet inside, you don't feel the difference. No engine screaming at you, no vibration. You're just gliding at 130 kilometers per hour without realizing it. The shift that changed everything for me was switching the display to battery percentage instead of kilometers. Percentage is real. 80% is 80% no matter what conditions you're driving in. After 2 weeks, I stopped caring about the range estimate entirely because I learned my own patterns. Highway driving drops about 1% per 5 kilometers. City driving around 1% per 8 kilometers. Aggressive acceleration burns about 1% per 3 kilometers. These become instinctive. The range number still bounces around wildly, trying to predict your future based on your past, but it's meaningless when your future driving will be completely different. The other lesson that killed my range anxiety: always plan to arrive with 10 to 15% left. Never push it to 0 to 5%. I know what you're thinking. Isn't that wasteful? Why not use every kilometer? Because real life doesn't care about your perfect calculations. A sudden headwind adds 5%. Unexpected traffic with climate running adds 5%. A detour adds 5%. These pile up fast. The irony is that arriving with 15% instead of 3% only costs you maybe 10 extra minutes of charging. But the psychological difference is enormous. One feels calm and in control. The other feels desperate, and desperate decisions, like speeding to reach a charger faster, only make consumption worse. Most new owners treat superchargers like gas stations. Arrive as empty as possible, fill up completely, then leave. This habit costs you more time than almost anything else, and the reason why is completely counterintuitive. Battery charging isn't like filling a tank. From 0 to 50%, the Juniper pulls maximum power, sometimes 150 to 170 kilowatts when conditions are perfect. Energy flows fast, but chemistry has limits. By 80%, charging drops to 50 to 70 kilowatts. By 90%, you're crawling at 25 to 40 kilowatts. That last 20% takes longer than the entire first 50%. Tesla's navigation knows this. When you plan a long trip, it never tells you to charge to 100%. It calculates the fastest total trip time by stopping more often for shorter charges. Here's a real example that opened my eyes. Same road trip, 2 strategies. Option 1, stop once, charge to 100%, wait 45 minutes. Option 2, stop twice, charge to 70% each time. 20 minutes per stop, 40 minutes total. Option 2 is faster because you spend more time at peak charging speeds and less time watching the rate crawl. This is what experienced road trippers mean when they say, charge to leave, not to arrive. You need enough to reach the next charger plus a buffer. That's it. Sitting there watching your rate drop from 100 kilowatts to 30 kilowatts while you wait for 95% is just wasted time you're never getting back. The second thing most people miss is battery temperature. A cold battery physically can't accept fast charging until it warms up. This is why winter supercharging feels painfully slow if you just drive up and plug in. Tesla designed the Juniper to automatically heat the battery when you navigate to a supercharger. But some owners skip navigation because they know the route. They arrive with a freezing battery, plug in, and watch the charging rate stay low for 10 to 15 minutes while the system warms up. That's 10 to 15 minutes you just threw away. Navigation isn't just directions, it's the car preparing itself. The biggest difference between owners who love their Juniper and those who just tolerate it comes down to one thing: plugging in at home every single night. This sounds obvious until you realize how different it feels from gas cars. With gas, you wait until you're nearly empty, then make a special trip to refuel. It's an event. It interrupts your day. With a Juniper, charging should be invisible. It happens while you sleep, like your phone. When home charging becomes your primary source and supercharging is just for road trips, everything clicks. Battery stays healthier because slow overnight charging creates less stress than aggressive fast charging. You never waste 20 minutes at a public charger for daily errands. Range anxiety basically disappears because every morning starts with enough charge for whatever the day brings. The math here surprised me. Level 2 home charging adds about 25 to 44 kilometers per hour, depending on your setup. Compared to supercharging's 250 to 500 kilometers per hour, that sounds painfully slow. But think about it. Your car sits parked 22 hours a day. Even at 25 kilometers per hour, 8 hours overnight gives you 200 kilometers. That's more than most people drive in a day. And the cost difference is huge. Supercharging runs 0.25 to 0.50 per kilowatt hour. Home electricity is 0.10 to 0.15 per kilowatt hour. Over a year, that's hundreds of dollars. But more valuable than money is peace of mind. You just never think about charging. It's automatic. Some people try to skip home charging and rely on workplace or public chargers instead. Free charging at work sounds great until the day all the spots are taken. Or your schedule changes. Or you switch jobs. Suddenly you're dependent on things outside your control, and that creates the exact anxiety you bought an EV to avoid. The Juniper's real advantage isn't what you can see. It's the software managing everything in the background. But it only works when you build the right habits. Preconditioning is the first one most people get wrong. They think it's about comfort, warming the cabin before you get in. That's a bonus. The real purpose is battery temperature. Lithium-ion batteries work best between 20 and 40 degrees Celsius. Too cold and they can't deliver full power. Too hot and they age faster. When you start Climate from the app 5 to 10 minutes before driving, you're bringing the battery to optimal temperature using wall power instead of battery power. More range for driving, better acceleration, faster charging if you stop later. This matters most in winter. At -10 degrees Celsius, a cold battery loses about 12% range just from temperature before you even turn on the heat. Add cabin heating, and you can lose 40% total range. Preconditioning cuts that dramatically. But there's no immediate feedback. The car doesn't say, "You just saved 8% battery." You only notice after weeks of comparing winter range with and without it. Second habit, use the Tesla app constantly, not just as a backup key. Check battery before leaving work so you know if you need to charge. Start Climate while still inside so the cabin is ready when you walk out. These small checks keep you informed instead of reactive. The third habit separates disciplined owners from people constantly complaining about battery drain. Use Sentry modes selectively. Sentry keeps cameras running while parked, recording security events. Sounds great until you realize it drains 5 to 15% per day. Leave it on everywhere by default, and you're losing 50 to 100 kilometers of range every week to surveillance you probably don't need. Your home driveway doesn't need monitoring at 3 a.m. Learn to toggle it on in sketchy areas, off everywhere else. This alone can recover 20 to 30% of mysterious phantom drain. Regenerative braking is the feature everyone talks about, but most people use wrong. The goal isn't slamming off the accelerator to feel the car slow down hard. That's jerky and inefficient. Real one-pedal driving is smooth, gradual deceleration that recovers energy while keeping passengers comfortable. The physics matter here. Every time you hit the brake pedal, you're converting motion into heat that disappears into the air forever. Regenerative braking converts that same motion into electricity and puts it back in the battery. Studies show regen can recover 10 to 30% of energy in normal driving, more in stop-and-go traffic. The technique takes practice. Anticipate stops earlier. Release the pedal sooner and more gradually. Let the car slow naturally. At first it feels weird because you're unlearning decades of habit. But after 2 weeks, it becomes instinctive. You coast perfectly to red lights without touching the brake. Passengers don't lurch. Range improves because you're recycling energy instead of burning it. The final piece is Climate. The HVAC can draw 4,800 watts for heating in extreme cold, nearly as much as highway driving. Testing shows cabin heating can cut range by 41% in winter. But you don't need to heat all the air to stay comfortable. Heated seats and steering wheel use only 500 watts combined while warming you directly. Prioritize those first. Add cabin heat only when needed. Let auto mode balance everything. Manual adjustments usually overcorrect and waste energy without improving comfort. Here's what separates Juniper owners who protect their investment from those who don't. These 11 habits aren't complicated, they're just different from everything gas cars taught us. Charge to 80% daily, not 100%. Drive by percentage, not estimated range. Use home charging as your foundation. Precondition before driving. Toggle Sentry mode strategically. Master smooth regenerative braking. Every single one of these costs you nothing, but saves you thousands in battery health over the years. The owners who figure this out in month 1 have a completely different experience than those who learn it in year 3 after the damage is done. That's the choice you're making right now with every charge cycle, every trip, every software setting. Which habit will you change first? Comment below. I want to know if it's the charging limit, the Sentry mode drain, or something else that clicked for you. If this breakdown gave you clarity on how to actually use your Juniper the right way, hit that like button so more owners find this before they make expensive mistakes. Subscribe to Tesla Zone for the next deep dive into EV technology that actually matters. And turn on notifications, because when Model 2 production details drop, you'll want to be here first. This is Tesla Zone. We cut through the noise. See you in the next one.